Mary, what are you doing? As we returned from shopping, what we saw was a moving truck parked in front of our house and my in-laws standing there. Seeing me surprised, my mother-in-law Mary continued to give instructions to the movers. Please don't just enter our house on your own. Don't get sassy with me, young lady. Open the door this instant. My father-in-law Ben reached for my purse as he said this. I hastily grabbed my purse and stepped back. Mary, with a mean smirk, continued. Strangers need to leave right now. I was so appalled by Mary's words that I couldn't say anything. But Tom, who heard everything alongside me, turned pale and started shaking. Mom, don't you know? What are you talking about? It seemed like the right time to tell the truth. Thinking this, I decided to reveal the truth to Mary, who was yelling in anger. My name is Jane. I'm a 48-year-old owner of an insurance agency. The company was started by my father David and I took over. Matching customers' needs with the right insurance policies has always suited me, someone who likes to fit things into their place. We've maintained good relationships with clients from my father's time, and thankfully, business has been on the rise. I met my husband Tom at work when I was 30. It was through a referral from a longtime client of my father's, who suggested we meet. Tom, who's 2 years older than me, was a very calm and dignified man. He had just broken up with a long-term partner who had cheated on him. We hit it off after a short conversation and exchanged contact info. It didn't take long for us to start going out. At the time, my mother was not in good health and had expressed a wish to see me in a wedding dress, which made me eager to get married. Tom, on the other hand, was not as eager about marriage. Nevertheless, respecting my feelings, he proposed 6 months after we met. Overjoyed, I responded with tears. I look forward to our life together. We quickly arranged a family meeting and then a wedding with only close family members. My mother looked so happy seeing me in my wedding dress and passed away peacefully the following month. I was able to fulfill my mother's wish thanks to Tom. I decided I was going to cherish Tom for the rest of my life. Tom, who held my hand and stayed by my side during my mother's funeral, for the rest of my life. Even after 5 years of marriage though, Tom and I didn't have children. We both believed that children are a gift and should come naturally, so we weren't in a rush, but my in-laws had something to say about it. This happened during a Christmas visit. Tom was reluctant to go, but after Mary insisted on us coming, we reluctantly decided to attend. Still no children? When will you finally show us a grandchild? Mom, we've said we're leaving it up to nature. If you're gonna talk like that, we're leaving. I understand, but maybe there's a problem. That's rude to Jane. Jane, I'm sorry. Let's go. Suddenly confronted with talk of grandchildren at the doorstep, Tom took me and left his parents' house. It was me who had convinced Tom to come, despite his reluctance. Yet, as we got back to the car, Tom apologized to me. I'm really sorry for putting you through that. I'm totally fine. I'm sorry for making you feel bad, Tom. I'm okay. And they are my parents, after all. But now, you are my family, Jane. If they hurt you, I'm willing to cut ties, even if they are my parents. But it's okay. We've had different values for a long time. Even without what happened with you, we've been estranged since I became an adult. Despite saying this, Tom looked sad, and all I could do was respond with a, okay. Since then, Tom has made a point of keeping me and his parents apart, even moving to a new address. Apparently, they called several times asking for our address, but Tom ignored all the attempts. And so, for about 13 years, I lived a life without meeting my in-laws except for family events. After I turned 40, my in-laws stopped mentioning grandchildren, which was a relief. However, one day, somehow finding out where we lived, my in-laws came over. It happened to be a day when Tom was out with a friend, and knowing I was alone, they forced their way into the house and started rummaging around. Oh, you two still share a bed at your age? How lewd! Jane, these undergarments hanging to dry won't excite Tom, will they? Ignoring my grimacing face, my in-laws continued to snoop around the rooms. They complained about everything, from eating my prepared meals to rummaging through the closet. This is why you haven't had grandchildren. Well, Mary, there's still hope. Saying this, my in-laws pulled out a crumpled newspaper article from their bag and pushed it towards me. It featured a story about a woman who had given birth at 60. Feeling a chill, I realized what they were implying. We've been too lenient until now. Even women at this age can have children. You're still okay. We should all live together. I'm home. Is someone here? My dad returned in the middle of Mary's conversation. In fact, upon moving to this house, we had started living with my dad at Tom's request. Tom cherished David greatly, and Dad, in turn, adored Tom as if he were his own son. We hadn't told my in-laws about this arrangement, so they were surprised to see David enter the room as if it were natural. Don't tell me that you are making Tom support your own dad too? Normally, one should first express gratitude to their husband's parents. Faced with my in-laws nodding to each other as if it were obvious, I didn't know what to say. Oh, thank you for always taking care of my daughter. I never thought you would be here. Don't you have any pride being supported by our son? Well, yes. My dad responded with a vague smile, which seemed to displease my in-laws. Dad, Mom, how did you find this place? Tom, who had returned early due to a friend feeling sick, shouted at Mary with an angry expression at the entrance to the living room. Facing Tom's visible anger, Mary responded calmly. You never told us, so we hired a detective. It was expensive, so you'll be paying. Thank you very much. No way am I paying for that. With that, Tom stormed over to Mary, grabbed her by the clothes, and forcibly made her stand up before dragging her out of the room. Ouch, that hurts. What are you doing? Tom, Mary is protesting. Stop it. Mary's shrieks were followed by Ben's yelling echoing through the room. However, Tom didn't stop until he had pushed Mary out the front door. Don't ever come back. I'm even considering cutting ties with you and Dad. Jane must have put you up to this. What a wife. It has nothing to do with Jane. I decided on my own. Please leave. Mary was still shouting something, but when Tom said, I'll call the police, she quietly went home. After making sure she was gone, Tom apologized to me and Dad. I'm really sorry. I never imagined they'd go as far as to hire a detective. That was extremely rude to you. It's not your fault, Tom. But I know you're a good person. Let's have dinner together. David, thank you. Tom, with tears in his eyes, repeatedly thanked my dad. That night, the three of us enjoyed dinner together. After discussing, we decided not to move but to call the police if they came uninvited again, considering they went through the trouble of hiring a detective. We thought my in-laws would show up again the next day, but weeks went by without a sight of them, and we hoped for a continued peaceful life. A month after my dad passed away, I screamed, Mary, what are you doing? Returning from shopping, we saw a moving truck parked in front of our house and my in-laws standing there. Seeing me surprised, Mary continued to give instructions to the movers. Please, don't just enter our house on your own. Don't get sassy with me, young lady. Open the door this instant. Ben reached for my purse as he said this. I hastily grabbed my purse and stepped back. Mary, with a mean smirk, continued. Strangers need to leave right now. I was so appalled by Mary's words and couldn't say anything. But Tom, who heard everything, turned pale and started shaking. Mom, don't you know? What are you talking about? It seemed like the right time to tell the truth. Thinking this, I decided to reveal the truth to Mary, who was yelling in anger. This house is mine, you know? What are you talking about? Tom bought this house, didn't he? How audacious can you get? Mary stared at me as if she couldn't understand what I was saying. When I looked at Tom, he sighed heavily and then spoke. It's definitely Jane's house. I'm just living here. Tom, is Jane blackmailing you? Poor thing. There's no need for such obvious lies. Jane's a housewife, isn't she? What? Tom got angry at Mary's words. He was probably angry at the implication that I was blackmailing him, but more so because Mary called me a housewife. What do you mean Jane's a housewife? Jane runs an insurance agency. What are you talking about? She's always at home, and then off to spas and gallivanting around. Just the other day, she was dining with an unknown man at a fancy restaurant. Scandalous. The unknown man Mary was referring to must be one of my business contacts. Recently, I was invited to a hotel lunch by someone who was also a client of Dad's, to reminisce about Dad. Tom was supposed to join, but he had work, so it ended up being just the two of us. Of course, it was partly to discuss a new insurance product, so it wasn't entirely personal, and Tom had agreed to it. If they had a detective follow me, they should know I returned home alone right after lunch. Yet, asserting such things must mean they're desperate to separate Tom and I. That person is someone I know too, and he's actually one of Jane's clients. That day, I just had my own work to do, but sometimes we dine together. Tom, you're being deceived. It's not too late. Marry a younger woman and have grandchildren. I would never want to marry anyone but Jane, and besides, I couldn't have children with anyone. What do you mean? Mary and Ben were both stunned by Tom's shout, and I was just as confused, frozen in place. Neither Tom nor I had undergone fertility testing. That was because Tom suggested we avoid it, fearing if there was an issue with either of us, it would lead to self-blame. A few years ago, after a high fever, the doctor recommended some tests. I went secretly. Turns out, I was born unable to have children. I thought if I told Jane, she might leave me. I would never leave you, Tom, just because we can't have children. Yeah, I know, but I was still worried. Hearing Tom's words, I instinctively hugged him, and Tom hugged me back. I decided then to cherish Tom forever. My heart was filled with this resolve. What do you mean? Can't have children? Are you defective? Is this a joke? Have you been deceiving us all this time? My in-laws seemed to have completely forgotten about me and started accusing Tom. Tom looked at his parents with a cold gaze. I've told you countless times I'm not your toy. Calling your own son defective is not something parents should do. What's wrong with calling a defective thing defective? Enraged by Tom's words, Mary grabbed his shirt front with both hands and confronted him. Then Tom whispered a man's name softly. Hearing this, Mary's face turned ashen, and she backed away from Tom. Who's that? Who knows? With Ben looking stunned and Mary suddenly panicking, Tom answered calmly. It's the name of my biological father. What? What are you talking about? I'm your dad. I didn't know myself until recently. Remember you used detectives? So did I. And it's funny how much you can find out. Tom said this and showed his cell phone screen to Ben. Mary was pale as a ghost. And upon seeing the cell phone screen, Ben turned red and started trembling. You've been cheating on me. So, that guy is Tom's biological father, meaning you've been cheating for 50 years. It's not like that. How is it not? You're hugging each other in the photo. Leaving my arguing in-laws behind, Tom and I asked the movers to transfer our belongings to a storage unit near my in-laws' house. Though we were told there would be an extra charge, the in-laws would be paying since they caused this mess, and they couldn't complain about bearing at least that much. So, I've been raising someone else's son. The thought of spending money on someone defective and not even related by blood makes my skin crawl. Tom, you have to take responsibility and support me. Got it? No way. Why not? You have an obligation to support me. Now it was Ben trying to grab Tom. Tom pulled away and laughed. Only Mom has to take responsibility. I was just born. Besides, you didn't pay for my high school or college tuition. I've been supporting myself since high school. How can you say that? Working hard to earn tuition, not being able to hang out with friends, and then having my part-time job money stolen by someone like you. That's when I finally understood why Tom especially despised Ben. But Ben acted as if it was his right. A child's money is the parent's money. And so is a child's spouse's money. That's because we're not related by blood. On paper, maybe. If you really want to cut ties, then pay back all the money we've spent on you. I already did that, with the monthly remittances. Remittances? I knew Tom had been sending money to his in-laws. I also knew he'd been transferring more than they demanded to keep them out of our lives. However, Ben seemed genuinely unaware of the remittances. I've been transferring money every month. $1,000 a month. What's that about? Oh, I get it. All my money, Mom's been using it with her lover. What? Mary was too flustered to say anything. Ben approached Mary and slapped her cheek. Initially, Mary looked at Ben in shock, but soon glared back at him and shrieked. What? A man with neither money nor status. You should be grateful you could marry me. That man has both wealth and prestige. It was just convenient to enjoy life with him without divorcing you. I even let you raise that man's child. Be thankful. That's outrageous. You said you were pregnant, so I married you, even willing to take a beating from your dad. So what? It would have been pitiful if he got hurt. Ben was speechless at Mary's defiant transformation. Just then, Mary's phone rang loudly. She checked it, her face lighting up before answering in a syrupy voice. Hello? What's up? Missed me? Hearing Mary's voice for the first time made my skin crawl. Tom, too, looked at Mary with a twisted face. But he was smiling. I was about to understand why. What? Who? Your wife? No, this is a misunderstanding. All of it? $1 million in compensation? Wait a minute. Mary was frantic, but the call seemed forcibly ended, leaving her dazed. Tom burst out laughing. So I guess they got all the photos and recordings, huh? What? This is your fault. It's called sharing information. Oh, and his wife has no intention of leaving him. He's the adopted son-in-law, so it's going to be tough. Adopted son-in-law? Oh, you didn't know that? Seems like he's got several mistresses. His wife told him to keep his affairs with younger women, so he must be getting an earful now. Mistresses? He said he loved only me. Mary collapsed on the spot, overwhelmed by the harsh reality. Ben looked down at Mary with satisfaction, then turned to Tom as if he had an idea. It's tough having a mom like that. How about we forget this happened and live together? Cut ties with Mary. The three of us will live together. I'll take care of you too, Jane. Don't come near Jane! Unfazed by Tom's warning, Ben approached me. The moment his hand landed on my shoulder, I grabbed it and threw him to the ground. What? Ben was confused, not understanding what had happened, while I looked down at him with a cold gaze. I had been attending self-defense classes since my youth. Selling insurance, even to businesses, could lead to encounters with dubious individuals. Starting the lessons was one of the conditions David set for me to take over the company, but I grew to enjoy it and kept attending even after taking over. Though I wondered if it was too much for 75-year-old Ben, seeing Tom looking down at him with satisfaction made me feel a bit relieved. Ben was speechless with surprise, but instead, Mary turned to me. Jane, that's impressive. Surely you can handle anything. How about paying the compensation to that man's wife for me? If we live together, we can save on living expenses, and I'll take care of the household chores. We can adopt a child, and I'll take good care of them. That's ridiculous. Why would Tom and I allow someone like you into our precious home, filled with Dad's memories? And why should I pay the compensation? Pay it yourself. I was able to say everything I thought to Mary. She was stunned at first for never having been confronted like this, but soon turned red and began shouting emotionally. How dare you speak to your husband's mother like that? I've already told the neighbors we're moving in, and the house has already started to be demolished. That's right. We have no house to live in now, so let me stay, not Mary. What are you talking about? I should be the one to live with my real son. Ben got up, shouting, and Mary snapped back at him. Tom, with a serious face, calmly stated our decision. Neither of you will live with us. We've decided to cut ties. If you keep making noise here, I'll call the police. The police? At the mention of the police, my in-laws' faces went pale, and they backed away, eventually disappearing towards the station while arguing. Later, my in-laws divorced. However, since neither had any money, they ended up living together. Ben tried to claim compensation from Mary and her lover, but it was offset by a compensation claim from the lover's wife. Mary, having never worked long hours in her life, struggled daily as she would quit any slightly disagreeable job. Similarly, Ben was barely making ends meet with both their salaries. The lover was severely reprimanded and lost his rights as the next company president, now confined to his home. His wife, unable to forgive a 50-year affair, was determined to claim the full compensation. I thought Tom might be depressed by all this, but he seemed surprisingly relieved and was doing well. Apparently, the family of his lover had approached him about becoming an adopted son and taking over their family business because he was half related to them, but he said, "It's too much for me," and apparently wrote a document renouncing the inheritance. Preferring not to compete and not being greedy, Tom's decision seemed just like him, though I felt a mix of disappointment and happiness. As for me, a business contact had recently offered me a cat they found, and I'm currently researching cat towers. The name is already decided. Marine. It's because David and Tom used to go fishing often, and the cat's eyes are as blue as the sea. Tom, too, is looking forward to welcoming a new family member. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the business contact. Excited, I opened the door, saying, "Welcome."